This is one of the most common questions that I get asked about ADHD and food, and that is, what foods should I not eat? What foods are bad? And honestly, this has come around from just countless amount of information from big podcasts, influencers, random nutritionists, people that are popping up doing it just to get viral, and honestly, it's wild. So let's clear some things up about what you can and can't and shouldn't eat if you have ADHD. But before we jump in, I have one teeny ask. If you are listening on Spotify, please can you subscribe and just put a 5-star review? It really helps me out. If you are on YouTube, again, please make sure that you hit subscribe, and if you can, guys, send this to a fellow ADHDer that needs to see it so we can reach more people to help people know what they need to know, and it will allow me to bring bigger, better, more valuable content to you guys for doing so. So that is my ask over and out. Let's get stuck in. So the big myth first, the big rock to handle first, is that there is no one single food, not for many foods, that is inherently bad for ADHD. And on the flip side as well, there are no foods that magically unlock all of ADHD superpowers. And there is not anything in isolation that makes ADHD symptoms worse. It's this information, this black and white thinking, that we think that certain things are good, certain things are bad, that leads to that very all or nothing thinking, which leads to intense restriction, hyperfixation, and ultimately disordered tendencies, whether that's restriction leading to overeating, orthorexic tendencies. So it isn't helpful in any way, shape or form, and it's usually actually this hyperfixation and these beliefs that some foods are inherently good or bad, which leads to the problems with ADHD and making things actually worse for us. But there are some things that, if eaten in excess, not alongside a balanced diet, can indeed make ADHD symptoms worse, and that is where we are getting clear today, guys. That is where I'm giving you the value, the information. So the one that you've probably heard of, seen most about, is sugar and ultra-processed foods. And there is a lot of talk about this, but not in any way that's helpful. You know, this idea that sugar causes ADHD, not true. It's that the big spikes, you know, the blood sugar rush that you get from having high sugar food, then the crash that comes with it, that makes ADHD symptoms worse. Mood swings, hyperactivity, irritability. So excess sugar doesn't cause it or make symptoms worse on its own, but when you are having far too much of it in an unbalanced way, then it can make ADHD symptoms worse. And with ultra-processed foods, again, it's not that ultra-processed foods on their own make ADHD worse, but generally what we find is if you are having more ultra-processed foods, you can have this same impact of sugar, you know, energy crashes, it can make brain function worse, but also as well, if a lot of your food is processed, if a big percentage of your food is from ultra-processed foods, that means that you're going to be getting, by process of elimination, less nutrients in your diet, which can support ADHD functioning, which we'll come on to later in this episode. So if the poison is in the dose, not the actual food itself, what is the solution? Now, what I suggest to my clients with ADHD is to follow an 80-20 rule. And this is a really good rule for anyone, whether you have ADHD or not. And that is to aim for about 80% of your food to come from minimally processed food or whole foods where possible. And then 20% of just whatever you fancy. Now, the reason this works is that if you try and restrict all ultra-processed food, all sugar, you see the information, the misleading information that makes you think that's making your ADHD symptoms worse. Fine for a bit, but inevitably when you want that dopamine hit from that food, you're in a situation where you're surrounded by it, you're then going to have it and then probably overeat, binge, and then you're in a cycle. Whereas if you just have a little bit every day, expose yourself to little bits that you enjoy, there's far less urgency to binge on it. And remember, it's the magnitude that causes the impact. If you're having little bits every day alongside balanced nutrients, that's absolutely fine. So roughly 80-20 is like a breakup in your day and in your week. You're going to be absolutely fine. And also when it comes to having the more sugary processed foods, where possible, I suggest to my clients that you pair it with other things that are going to stop the big swing, the blood sugar rises and crashes. So for example, if you're going to have some biscuits on the evening, pair it with some Greek yogurt and fruit, because what that protein and fiber would do is slow down digestion and stop the blood sugar rise and crash. So that can be a strategy to incorporate those foods in a way that manages your symptoms if you do find that when you have them, it does send symptoms crazy. Now, the next thing is not the food itself that's bad for ADHD, but how it is eaten, and that is irregular, random eating patterns. You know, ADHD brains, there's often memes about forgetting to eat, hyper-focusing all day, and then overeating at night. If you're on ADHD medication, you might find that your appetite's quite low. And if you're on a weight loss journey especially, you might go, oh, that's a great thing, I don't even need to eat all day. And then you're hardly eating, and then it gets to the evening, and then we're overeating. And irregular eating makes a lot of things worse when it comes to ADHD, because we know that just from a general rule that irregular eating is going to make your energy worse, it's going to make your food focus higher, and it's probably going to increase things like irritability. Now, with ADHD, we know that there is increased risk of food noise. If you go back to one of my previous episodes, I talk all about that. So by you not eating all day, you could be making food noise, food preoccupation worse, which isn't helpful. We know that with ADHD, we struggle with focus and productivity. So if you're not eating, you're not giving yourself that fuel, your productivity, your focus will be reduced. Irritability, we know with ADHD, we have higher irritability, impulsivity. Our emotional swings are like emotions on steroids. So you're adding fuel to a burning fire. So how you eat to support ADHD in terms of that regular eating is just as important as the what. And in terms of how you set up a regular, consistent eating pattern, there is no magic rule. Everyone's different. And this will be something that we go into a lot more depth and detail with inside my Wired to Five program, where we will cover all the different ways you can do it. But I would say, as a golden rule of thumb, don't be going anything longer than 5-6 hours where possible without fueling yourself in some way, shape or form. Now, the third thing is caffeine and alcohol. And I'm just going to cover this one very, 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 very quickly, because there are some people that say that caffeine and alcohol with ADHD is like shouldn't happen. And depending on like the medication that you're on, you might find that if you are on a stimulant-based ADHD medication, caffeine, it is a complete no-go just because of how much of a conflict there is. But again, it's all about the dosages. A little bit of alcohol every now and again isn't going to have a massive impact. But if you're having it every single weekend or multiple times through your week, and then you're finding your motivation, your action taking gets harder, your mood is dropping, because remember that alcohol can have that effect of reducing our mood the next day. You're then dopamine seeking, which is then leading to unhelpful behaviors, overspending, overeating. It's maybe having an impact on your cognitive functioning. So if things feel a lot harder mentally than they usually would, then again, we might want to be thinking about bringing alcohol down. Caffeine, remember, with the hyperactivity that comes with ADHD, caffeine can make that worse in some respects. If you're already feeling quite anxious, quite jittery, quite sporadic, your brain's running at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and then you throw on loads and loads and loads of caffeine, it's like your brain is just literally running at a speed that you can't work with. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel anxiety provoking. So again, this is about knowing your limits and having a little bit. Like, I will have 1 to 2 coffees a day, anything more than that from a caffeine perspective, and then I start to feel like that. Now, moving on to the fourth part, which is all about nutrient deficiency. So this isn't necessarily a case of things that you eat that make ADHD worse, but things that you're not having that make ADHD symptoms worse, because we do actually have quite a lot of research around vitamins and minerals and their impact on how we function with ADHD. And the biggest ones that come up in research are omega-3, zinc, B vitamins, iron, magnesium, and vitamin D. Now, if you are deficient in these, we know that these can have an impact on your ADHD symptoms. But this is where an ADHD brain will think, well, if lower levels of these are a problem, then maybe I just need to go buy all these supplements. And if I have more, better. That's not true. We only know from research that if you are deficient, so you have lower levels than is required, that you have the negative impact. It's not that if you have excess amounts of these, you're going to be more focused and more happy and all this stuff. So if you are ever concerned that maybe you do have deficiencies, and these would show up in so many different ways for each one, I would go and get tested. Now, you can't get tested for omega-3 because that's not that's an essential fatty acid. That's not a vitamin or mineral. But iron, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and your B vitamins, you can maybe go and get some, have a look at it. So there aren't tests for all of these, but iron, vitamin D, vitamin B, those ones you can. And if you are ever thinking that maybe I do have that, you can go and get blood tests. But if you do not have a diet that is very rich in omega-3, zinc, magnesium, and all those other ones, it could be worth thinking about adding in more foods to your diet that include those things, so you know you're best supporting yourself. So I'll just quickly cover some examples for each of those foods now. Now, you can't get tests for all of these. The ones where it will be definitely worth getting tested to see if you need to increase the foods in your diet or get a supplement would be vitamin D, iron, and vitamin B. Things like magnesium and omega-3, they are generally 2 supplements that I recommend to all of my ADHD clients and just clients in general, because there's so many other benefits beyond just our ADHD symptoms. So those are two that I would recommend. Caveat is if you have a lot of omega-3 in your diet, a lot of fatty fish, then you probably don't need to be taking it, but most of us don't eat enough of that. And then for your iron, your vitamin D, your B vitamins, if you are deficient, I would always start with food sources where you can and then move to supplementation. But obviously this is where you want to go and speak to your doctor about that, because they can advise. It depends obviously how low and deficient you are. You know, a little bit sprinkled in your food sources probably won't be enough if you are massively deficient. So that should have cleared up quite a lot of the myths and misconceptions about what foods are bad for ADHD. I've only just covered a tiny percentage of the crazy misinformation that comes around nutrition, foods with ADHD. And the thing is as well, guys, you might even know exactly what you can do. You are actually really well educated when it comes to nutrition. You know what's fact, you know what's fiction. You just wanted to watch this video for just a little bit of reassurance that, yeah, I'm on the right lines. And the biggest battle is then being consistent. How do I stay consistent knowing all of this with eating that way? I know I need to eat an 80-20 balance, but I just want to eat the more sugary, fun, processed foods. I know that maybe I need to be including supplements, but how do I stay consistent? How do I remember to take these supplements? How do I put these foods that maybe are a bit more boring, like the veg and the seeds and the nuts, into my diet when I just want to have chocolate? I know I need to eat regularly, but how do I remember to do that when I'm hyper-focusing and I've got the time blindness? That's the part that's the challenge. It's not the knowing, it's the implementing. So not only did I want to give you guys the knowledge today, I wanted to give you a tool for implementation to make it stick and see the positive results. And that tool is Wired to Thrive, the UK's first, and in fact, I'm pretty confident it's the world's only ADHD or ADHD-friendly 10-week program designed specifically to help you not just lose weight and get healthier in the 10 weeks, but know exactly why you struggle to stay consistent, how to do everything that I've just said, to stay consistent, to take that knowledge and implement it, because you've tried to do that before, but no one's ever shown you how to do it with your ADHD brain. You'll have had people maybe talk about ways to work with your ADHD. You'll have had people talk about ways to lose weight and keep fit, but no one's brought the two together to give you the results that you want. And this is exactly what we do inside the program. And we're not just covering nutrition. We are covering mindset. We are covering weight loss. We're covering exercise. We're covering every element that you can think of that is going to allow you to live the happiest, healthiest, most confident, empowered life possible. To end the start-stop struggle, to no longer feel like it is a battle with your brain, to stop seeing everyone else achieve the results and you think, what the fudge is wrong with me? I'm starting another thing. So if that sounds like what you need, you want to take the knowledge and you want to implement it to get results, I will leave all the details for the program inside the show notes, or if you're on YouTube, in the description. So a big thank you for being here today, guys. And if you do as well have any questions around myths, misconceptions when it comes to food with ADHD, make sure to leave a comment and I will get back to every single one of you. Over and out for today. Have a fantastic one and I will catch you next time around.